Welcome to the Authority File. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. In this 4-episode series sponsored by Sage Publishing, my guests and I will be discussing how libraries are creatively supporting faculty and students in their remote teaching and research. Our guests will describe how they quickly adjusted to and expanded their remote learning environments as COVID-19 spread across the country last spring. We'll also look at how those changes evolved as they moved into summer and began to plan for the fall, and I use this term loosely, reopening. Plans that include new approaches to customer service, reconfiguring physical spaces, and developing easier remote access to library services and resources. Joining me are Linda Van Kuren, Assistant Dean for Access and Resource Management at Georgetown University, Sally Gibson, Library Director at Missouri Western State University, Kat McGrath, Renewals and Collections Librarian at the University of British Columbia. In this first episode, our guests take a look back and discuss the events and decisions that got them to where they are today. Okay, so Linda, Sally, Kat, thank you so much for joining us on the program. The first question, actually, before I even get into the first question, I think, Kat, you mentioned that we're in such a fluid and dynamic situation with all of the planning that everybody's doing for their libraries and institutions that everything we might say in these episodes or in this podcast could change at any moment. So there's sort of a disclaimer up front, but we are very interested to hear about what all of you are doing currently, to support faculty and students and your library community. As so many of us are moving to digital platforms and remote teaching and research and learning. But to get started, I'm wondering if I'd love it if each of you could sort of introduce yourselves, the institution you're with, and then just describe, generally, we'll be able to dig into more of this later on, but describe generally how your library helped respond to the rapid move to online instruction this past spring, and how it initially altered its services and instruction. And Linda, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I'm Linda Van Kuren. I'm the Assistant Dean for Resources and Access Management at the Dahlgren Memorial Library at Georgetown University Medical Center. So we serve a School of Medicine, a School of Nursing and Health Studies, biomedical graduate research education, and a hospital and a cancer center. We were lucky in a sense that when the university moved to a virtual learning environment, we have been an electronic library for over a decade. And so our patrons expressed gratitude to us because the collections remained available to them, as did our services. We did have to make some adjustments for in-person services. So physical items that were checked out, we told people to keep until we reopened. Our workshops just moved to a virtual environment, as did our reference consultations, and as did our informationists. Those are librarians that go on rounds in the hospital. They moved to a virtual support structure. And then we updated all of our messaging to let folks know that even though the physical facility was closed, that our services and our collections still remained available to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Sally, how about you?
So I'm Sally Gibson, and I'm the library director at Missouri Western State University, and that's in St. Joseph, Missouri, about an hour north of Kansas City. We're kind of a regional university. We're open access, so we have a lot of students that are first-generation college students, and then, a lot of them work and have a variety of activities that they have to be concerned with. And so our campus, fortunately, we were on spring break when the campus decided to close, so they extended spring break, and then they kind of announced what the plan would be for how to approach classes, because the university was concerned that a lot of our students, the only internet access would be through their phone, or how reliable the internet access would be. So there was they did a culminating experience, and that was kind of determined by the faculty member whether they wanted to do a project or a test or things like that. And then students also had the option of taking credit for class and just ending in mid-March there. So for the library, the immediate question was, what will the library do? And like Linda, we've been helping distance students for years. And so I said, well, we've already got all that in place. We've got ebooks, we've got e-journals. And so we just have more distance students. So I felt that immediately I had to make sure I got the messaging out. The library's closed, but we can still serve you at the same level that we've been serving you throughout the semester. And that was kind of what we did. And we also did the don't worry about the books, return them when you can.
Okay. And then Kat?
Yes, my name is Kat McGrath, and I'm the Renewals and Collections Librarian at the University of British Columbia, and I'm located in Vancouver, Canada on the Pacific West Coast. UBC is a ARL research library, so we have all of the professional schools, medical, engineering, law, and we have a very distributed campus. It's quite large. So again, the timing of the closure, physical closure, was fairly fortunate in terms of the academic year. March 20th, we were just approaching end of term. So when the classes went virtually all online, exams were canceled, and people, as Sally described, were given different kinds of assignments in order to complete their coursework. We also have been in the online environment in terms of our resources and services for many, many years, and we do have robust collections that we're able to make that transition quite smoothly. I'd say, just on sort of very library-centric perspective, the challenge for some of us was that we were entering our fiscal year end, which was March 31st. So that was the first time of doing that online, and I can tell you, I would have never thought it would have been possible in a different era, but we did that. So our experiences echo very much what Linda and Sally described.
Excellent. Okay. So then wondering, how things evolved from there. What were some of the initial steps your libraries took that went, beyond the rush to get online? I mean, it sounds like, most of you, Sally, Kat, and Linda, you had a pretty good base of sort of operations, so to speak, in terms of offering online instruction and services. So it's sounding like, part of the situation required, marketing, I suppose, from your libraries to to make sure your community understood what you had available and what you didn't. And so, Linda, I'll circle back with you. I mean, what were some of the next steps that you took?
Right. As we continued into the virtual learning environment, one of the things we focused on was making sure that there was accurate information about COVID being presented to our students and faculty and researchers. And so we had a COVID-19 resource list that we had actually started back in February, since we are mostly serving medical patrons. But that, as the number of cases in the United States grew, that information needed to be updated almost daily with new authoritative information. We also assisted faculty when they were looking for additional materials. It was, in our case, usually videos or question banks that could supplement their online classrooms. We also increased our virtual workshops and our instructional offerings. And in fact, we've seen a 250% increase in participation in our offerings since last year at the same time. One other thing we did was we increased our online chat support services. We increased the hours by using our information service desk students. These are the students that are usually the first point of contact for our patrons when they walk in the door, and we retrain them to help patrons in a virtual environment. And we're seeing a substantial increase in those numbers as well.
Oh, excellent. Okay. And Sally, what was sort of the, phase two, so to speak, as you kind of moved into the summer months?
Well, and, publishers were opening up free resources and making them readily available. And so we felt kind of get the message out to campus, because we had faculty members kind of sharing between each other, oh, this resource is free, this resource is free. So we said, let us manage that. We added it to our knowledge base, so it was available in our discovery system. And then we had launched our Lean Library product in February. And so I was able to say, we have this browser extension product, and it will help you find the library resources in the open access product. So we kind of to really tout that, yes, these resources are free, but the library is managing it, making it available to kind of make sure that people knew that you could still come to the library and we would help you locate these resources. And then we also, there was a lot of message about COVID-19 across campus, and things were very chaotic in terms of the dorm was closing and students were getting out of the dorm, and so we used our Lean Library alert on the browser so that we could kind of target the messages there. And so when we started our curbside delivery and pickup in May, then the students and faculty who would go on the library website, they'd see that alert there, and so they could get the messaging there, because I felt like there was so much information going on that some of the library message could get lost in the general COVID message for campus.
Right. So Sally, you mentioned Lean Library, and I'm just for those of our listeners who may not be familiar with that, can you describe what that is and what it does?
So it's a browser extension, and the student is able to download the extension, and then it will help locate no matter what website they're on. They can be on Google, they could be on any of the publisher's site, and it'll give you the pop-up that says you have this resource subscription available through your library, and then it'll authenticate, and so they're able to get the library subscription that way. But they don't need to start off on a library website or in any of our databases. No matter what they are, the extension will discover and alert them that they have access to this resource. And there's also a feature where if it's an open access resource, it'll say you might be able to get access this way, and kind of help them navigate to how they can get access to the various resources.
Right. Okay. And just to clarify, was Lean Library already an offering prior to COVID, or did you add that in as a solution as you went forward?
So we just launched it in February.
Okay.
So it was a new subscription to us, a new product. So
Yep.
We were still in the initial phase of kind of getting the word out that we've got this available.
Okay. And then Kat, over to you.
Sure. I can say some things about Lean Library too, but I'll just to loop back to some of the other things that we did in response is we elevated our chat reference. Typically between terms, we don't have those kinds of services active, but we had that going with extended hours and more people involved. And this is a service that is supported throughout the province, in addition to other virtual reference services. Again, to echo some of the comments from Sally and Linda, the whole communications theme being very, very important. We do have a communications officer who is tapped into other faculty and campus news channels, so working with their newsletters and services, and an active social media campaign. So using those avenues to get our what we're doing out to people. Workshops, virtual workshops, especially for our graduate students, I think the term has been used is exploded. So we might have had 10 to 20 registrants for some of the sessions that were being offered at the time.
Yep.
Into the hundreds now. So,
wow.
And they're just expanding the range of services too that or tools and services in that arena. I could add more about Lean Library, but we've got lots of questions, so maybe I can speak to that later.
Sure, yeah. But I was curious though, Kat, you mentioned the explosion in workshop participation. Mm-hmm. What were the kinds of workshops you're providing?
A lot of it is around, to support the graduate students around using NVivo, thesis formatting. We've got a whole digital scholarship lab, so support for GIS. So some of the digital tools that actually had just been, we're working on expanding and within this last year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm very curious how you all kind of, how your libraries sort of set priorities, especially after the scramble during the spring term, and then what sort of influenced your decision making and project timelines as you moved into the summer months and began to prepare for fall. Was it your faculty cohort that was the main focus, or students, or ramping up your ebook and digital resource collections, or maybe it was your physical spaces, and as you kind of talk about these decisions, just let us know, like, kind of what informed those decisions, and sort of the deliberations behind that. And Linda, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Honestly, there was no specific type of patron that we focused primarily on. So our director has always guided us to be very nimble and very responsive in our offerings and our collections. And so we continued that. And
Okay.
we listened to what our patrons told us, either through one-on-one communications with librarians or requests that came in through our virtual reference service. So in response to those requests, we created guides and added new content as we have the budget for in new areas of importance. So COVID, telehealth, racial justice, all of these topics became more important to our user base as the summer went on. We also had a hospital patron reach out to our director, and they needed iPads to facilitate end of life conversations for patients that could not have visitors. So
Wow.
we responded, and we just gave them all of our circulating iPads for their use. So we were happy to provide that kind of support for those people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sally, how about you?
So, the main concern was going to be, are we going to be physically open summer or not? Most of the students had moved to online classes for summer, and that had kind of been the norm. We were moving more towards that previous summers anyway, and then we decided we would not open the physical building. And so then we had found this spring that the faculty had a variety of skill sets when it came to teaching online and even using our learning management system, Canvas. And so for fall, they've been told they have to have their courses in Canvas. They have to have a hybrid model so that if we have to pivot again and shut down campus, we're ready to go. And so we really, for the summer, we really focused on helping the faculty get ready for fall and being aware of what library resources were available, the different e-resources that we've got, kind of how they can incorporate that into their classes and kind of help them so that they are using the Canvas learning management system. And we already had Canvas set up so that the library resources link was there, and we had tailored it to the different subjects so that, the resources were specific for their subjects. So we had that, but just, again, making them aware that we've got this in place and we've got this available. And then, getting the library ready with the physical distancing and the setup for fall. That's kind of what we've been thinking about. And now we've kind of got everything spaced, and we've taken out different study spaces, and we're closing our coffee shop, so we won't have that open in fall. And so now we're kind of thinking about the messaging so that the students are ready when they come back in fall, kind of knowing what to expect from the library, and because it's going to be very different and not what they're used to, but we've got to get them prepared. And even I was just having a discussion just this week with the staff on how we can do the staffing models, because we've got some people that are staying remote, but I thought, everyone's going to need a public free day, is what I'm calling it, so that you don't have to interact with anyone, and kind of get a break, because we think it's going to be kind of stressful that first couple weeks when everyone's back on campus, because it's hard when you come back to campus.
Yeah.
And you've been social distancing for months, and suddenly you're around a lot of people. I think it's just going to be a stressful first couple weeks.
Right. And Kat, how about you?
So it's just to go back to where we started with this conversation. It's really been a moving target. First of all, we were going to be closed for 2 weeks, or the physical space is closed for 2 weeks. Then it was 3 weeks. Then I mean, basically, we're looking at the remainder of the year in terms of our physical spaces. But and as far as the support for collections, I think what was our priority has been to get online access for the resources that are needed to support courses. And we did see a large uptick, or well, maybe not a large uptick, but certainly there was no drop in enrollment for the summer sessions, which typically are quieter and smaller cohorts. And also what was revealed is all of the research areas or teaching areas that have historically relied on our print collections, and notably in music and some of the non-English languages that we support here. We've got a very major Asian library collection and research area here. So we're not buying any print. In fact, all even processing of print collections has been suspended. Mm-hmm. And we have definitely seen a huge demand for streaming media. So it's really been driven by point of need of faculty and students to do their coursework.
Right.
And just to return, physical spaces, we're in very early conversations about reopening.
Okay. So, Kat, with the huge uptick in this streaming, is that something you feel like you're going to be the library's going to be able to continue to support? I know that sometimes tends to be it quickly becomes a very big budgetary issue.
Yes, we're talking with different vendors about solutions on that, and I think again, to echo some of the other comments too, that also educating faculty about some of the resources that we already have. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not necessarily new content that we need to acquire. Sometimes we do have it, and so that's where we've been able to work with them on, if not new material, at least alternative material.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just heard from Linda Van Kuren, Assistant Dean for Access and Resource Management at Georgetown University, Sally Gibson, Library Director at Missouri Western State University, Kat McGrath, Renewals and Collections Librarian at the University of British Columbia. This series is brought to you by Sage Publishing. Join us next week when we continue our conversation and talk about how our guests are planning for the fall opening and what their library's ongoing role will be in providing support, instruction, and services to their campus communities.
Yes, we needed to wait and to see what the students were doing, and we just are getting that information now. And so we are making decisions based on the number of students that have indicated that they want some on-campus face-to-face interactions. Our faculty have worked really hard to create a robust virtual environment that's the equivalent of a in-person experience. And so for any students that require that or wish for that, they can participate in that. And so we are, as we've just gotten that information, now we are finalizing our plans for the physical facility. Again, trying to keep in mind all of the health requirements and capacity requirements that we are being asked to follow.
If you like what you hear, rate us or give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And if there's a topic you'd like us to cover, drop me a line. I'm at bmickey@ala-choice.org. As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced by Choice's senior digital media producer, Mark Dirks, and digital media assistant, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.